remind me, is maybe West Kendall, so we have to bring Canada's basketball practice. I like your glasses.
No, watching on the doing karaoke, and I'm listening to some Taylor Swift.
Oh my god, I love it. I wish you could like
We good?
Alright, welcome everyone to the Durham Select Board meeting here on the fire station Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. Calling the meeting to order, and we have a quorum with Joe Tom being excused. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Do we have any amendments to the agenda? The only thing I wanted to say is, I do in new business want to have a discussion about the, how we want to get feedback regarding the War Memorial gazebo, and I do want to add that for a discussion, so I had some thoughts on it, and I realized that we hadn't put it on the agenda. We have checked with the lawyer. We can add things to new business from the floor, though we are trying to avoid it. It's just it was a mishap on my part to ask it to be put on the agenda. But we have received a lot of feedback from folks that they want us to discuss it. We had some questions, so that's on me. So other than that, do we have any other amendments to the agenda?
I didn't see this, I do have one question, didn't see the cemetery issue on here. And I saw
I think it's in the warrant articles.
in the warrant article,
Yep.
gotcha.
Also, I will just say, before we go into public comment, Jerry and I did a little bit of an adjustment here on the agenda to try to make the note taking a little bit easier. So you'll look, motion language is built into these articles, and I know that, and I'm very guilty of this. In Robert's rules, our motions are supposed to try to be short and simple, and sometimes all of us, and myself included, kind of start rambling, and Jessica's kind of doing this number the whole time. So there's essentially draft language for motions that we can use if we want, and if we decide for or against some of the things in the motion, we can do minor edits there to try to make them more concise. So just something to know. Public comment. Any public comment? There's only 2 members of the public, so 50%, nice. And just as a reminder for public comment, name, street, and your comment, and it's not a question back and forth, but just a chance for us to hear what you have to say. So if we don't respond to a question, it's not that we're being rude, it's just here to get information.
So I'm Jeff Wakeman, I'm Jewel Brook Road, and I was taken aback on Friday when we received the news blast to find out that the town of Dermot is changing from a calendar year to a fiscal year. And that was done without any public, there was no public hearing, there was no information, there was no referendum, no town meeting to discuss it or anything, and it was just done. And although I looked around and found that it is within the purview of the select board to do that, I thought it was not a very good way to do that without to make such a major change without any public comment for it. I also question the legality of the select board changing the date of the town meeting, as that was, I'm pretty sure, voted on at a town meeting by the town. That now obviously it makes sense if you're going to a fiscal year, you've got to change it, but I would question the legality of that, whether it should be a town vote to change the date of it. But that's basically what it was. I was just rather upset that you would make such a major change without soliciting any comments from the town.
Thank you so much for the feedback tonight. Michael, no public feedback?
I'm not sure if this is the right time to do it. I'm here basically.
Did you want to give some feedback on the ordinance recommendations?
Yes.
In capacity as an individual or as someone from the Conservation Commission?
I guess both. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
well, I'm okay with if we get a little bit of feedback during our review of the discussion on that in your role as the Conservation Commission, or you can give it now, whatever your preference is.
I don't have a preference.
Okay, cool. We'll do it when we get to that one then. All right, we have our meeting minutes from last meeting. We've also moved that earlier up in the agenda because it kind of makes sense to accept meeting minutes from the previous meeting first. So do I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented to us from the February 25th meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February
Approved,
20th.
sorry.
What did you say?
To approve,
You-
just,
I told us all that we have pre-written motions and then I didn't read the pre-written motion, so. So Josh made a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 25th, 2025. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Do we have any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of the motion? Any opposition? Seeing none? All right. Okay, so we're going to dive right in here to old business, which is starting off with the draft amendment to the contract zoning and battery energy storage system. We had a pretty robust discussion last meeting about this, and you can see in our packet that we have highlighted here the edits that we requested to be made. Primarily, those edits had to do with increasing the square footage to 400,000 square feet for the solar arrays, taking into consideration feedback from the Conservation Commission. And then I think those the language that pertaining to the, sorry, I'm trying to find it, under 5.8.5, permitting requirements for Tier 3 battery energy storage system. It says Tier 3 BESS shall meet the following minimum requirements unless otherwise specified in the contract zoning agreement. That was kind of the line that we were waiting to have put in there. Just to let you all know, Joe Tom obviously is excused from tonight's meeting, but this was something that he had brought up as a concern last meeting. He sent an email to me saying he had reviewed it all and this was in line or met his recommendation, and he felt that he could approve it. Obviously his vote isn't being taken tonight, but I just wanted to share that he did provide some feedback there. So, do we have any discussion on the BESS contract zoning, or the amendment to the contract zoning and battery energy storage system?
I just have a question, and I know this is silly, and I should just be able to read that and understand, but when I'm looking on page 15, and it's noise, so do you get, are you with me?
15, where?
aye.
Aye, yeah.
And then what's in brackets, it says number changes with enactment of this amendment. What are we talking about?
I think it's referring to the 5.20 number.
Right, I think,
That's an annotation.
yep,
Yeah, this is gonna be inserted as section 5.8, which bumps everything.
Okay.
Yep,
I knew it was something simple, but my brain just wouldn't
that's
get
okay.
there. Thanks, George.
Michael, did you have comments from the Conservation Commission on the pest storage?
No, we don't have an issue with contract zoning for BESS storage.
Mm-hmm. Or this motion will be on both BESS and solar because it's all going to be part in one. Did you all want to share your comment on that?
Sure. I don't know if you received the letter we
We
wrote.
did receive some in writing, but I just wanted to give opportunity for rather than me speak for you all, let you all speak on that. Just name and
Oh, sorry. My name is Mike Friendly, run around Pond Road. I'm a member of the Conservation Commission, and I think I speak for the Conservation Commission on this issue. We would prefer that solar not be included in contract zoning. I think first of all, we understand that contract zoning allows siting and mitigation, but I think there are other ways to handle that for solar. And I think we don't have an issue with BESS being included, because there are some real risks with BESS that are not present with solar, such as chemical spills and real risk of fire with some of these battery formulations. But solar doesn't have those risks. And I think the town would really benefit from solar. I think it would increase our tax base, which I think has been a long-term issue with this town. We don't really have any industry, and it would decrease individual tax liabilities without really causing, solar wouldn't sort of increase our fiscal responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would benefit the town. I think I've heard people that are concerned about the impact, the visual impact of solar, but the ordinance addresses that. There's visual impact studies that are required, and there's buffering that is required that should address people's concern for that. I also think there are other ways that we can control siting for solar that we really haven't discussed as a group. There are other towns such as Topsom that have maps, overlay maps, and it's more of a carrot. They charge less for development in certain areas, and we could develop those maps, and we are sort of in the process of doing that on the Conservation Commission. I think it would have been helpful if we could have talked to the town lawyer regarding this, but I understand that there are real costs to that, but we weren't really able to do that. But I think that would be a potential way of addressing siting without having to go through town meeting. And I think town meeting, I understand it's a very democratic process, but we don't really require that for any other developments. We don't require it if you want to put a supermarket in. You don't have to go through the town meeting. If you want to put a big gravel pit in that, occupies hundreds of acres, there's no requirement to go to town meeting. It's a very high threshold, and it's really going to inhibit development for solar. And I'm not sure if we really want to do that as a town. I think if we're doing that for solar, I think we really need to do it for all these other things. We're really singling out solar for really unclear reasons. There aren't really risks to solar aside from, people just don't like it because of its appearance. So I think it's unfair to put solar in the same category as BESS.
So I want to say I 100% hear where you're coming from. I think that oftentimes with development, we hear a lot about opinions on development, but don't think about the tax implications. And like you're saying, if you're adding valuation to the community, that is now being covered by, especially because these valuations are going to be higher than adding a house or something like that, that provides more valuation, which means that when we're figuring out the mill rate, there's more to divide by. Everyone's mill rate drops. So I 100% understand that. I think you made a really good point that sometimes I think that I've attended a lot of these hearings and a lot of the discussion on this. There's this repeated phrase that well, I don't want to see the solar, I don't want to see the solar. Our solar ordinance is really, really robust buffering already, the most robust that I think any municipality might have. So I think you're correct in saying that our ordinance already addresses that buffering and that visual. Our buffering is 50 feet wide, and I think some people hear that and go, oh, that's 50 feet from the solar panels. No, it's 50 feet thick of vegetation of varying heights. So I think that that's a really good point that you just made. And I also think you do have a really fair point there about we're not asking any other 20-acre impact, like a pit or anything like that, to be held to this threshold. My personal thought on this is that I don't want to let perfect be the enemy of good, and I think that this is the best tool we have for right now to develop that. Because to your point about the Topsom, for those of you who don't know, Topsom, the way they do it is essentially you have a zone, and if you're developing that zone, you pay a mitigation fee per acre that you impact, or per square foot, or something like that. In a zone where they would like to see solar, that fee is very low. in a zone where they wouldn't want to see solar, that fee might be like 3, 4, 5 times higher. So a perfect example is there's very little to no fee on top of this capped landfill, but this prime agricultural soil in a farm has a huge fee. Then they take their money from that and they put it into an account that's used for conservation projects within town. Setting up that framework is something that I think will take us a long time, especially because they also have a Brunswick Topsom Land Trust that's right active in there. We'd have to maybe come up with an agreement with some of our local land trusts as well. So for me, I think that this, putting it in here is a good holding place until the town can explore those other options, because right now this still gives us the opportunity, because what I'm concerned about is I am admittedly a fan of solar. What I'm concerned about is a development in a really bad spot in terms of right on top of a agricultural production that has high value soils that are now taken out of that. And we have a lot of those mapped in town. I think we've been over that together. So for me, I think that this is a good holding place. But I hear what you're saying about we need to be more equitable in how we evaluate all development. And so I think that we need to have continued discussions on that. But for me, I just think this is the best spot for right now, and then we can maybe reevaluate over the next year and figure out the nuts and bolts to this process. So, Heather?
I just have 2 things to add to that. One, I feel like going to the 400,000 square feet, that was in direct response to the Conservation Commission's concerns around community size solar and not wanting that to be part of, not have that be a hindrance. And then, go ahead.
We actually argued for a much larger, but the planning board chose that.
Okay.
Sorry,
So that was-
I thought you had all recommended 20 acres.
We did,
And
and
so,
they went with 10 acres.
so we increased it to, we're increasing this
Oh.
to 20 acres.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's weird because the square, sorry if you don't mind me, it's weird because the square footage, based off of the panel square footage, and so it was listed as 200,000 square feet, which represents about 9 acres of panels, and we increased it to 400,000 square feet, or sorry, 200,000 square feet represented.
175 is 9.6 acres.
Mhm.
400,000 is about 19 acres.
Right, so that's
Okay.
19 acres of
Okay.
panels, not of total area. So
Okay.
we thought that that was a good, that we haven't accepted that, but that's what we're discussing tonight. We thought that increases it to allow for more flexibility so someone right now could do
Community solar.
almost,
Yeah.
community solar, 100% fine. On-farm solar production, 100% fine. But those bigger projects, we're now talking over 20 acres of panels, not over 20 acres of impact. So we felt like that was a good bridge
Okay.
there.
So that's what I wanted to highlight, is that I wanted
Okay.
to make sure that you understood that's the level that's going to contract zoning.
Okay.
If this is accepted,
We
not.
were unaware of that.
Does
Yeah.
that change?
No,
Well, I understand.
I think they're separate issues, but I appreciate
I
that.
understand your point of, it seems like we're saying, this is the big bad development that we're worried about in town where we're not, and we've heard people say, well, I just don't care if it's a big building. I care if it's solar panel. And I understand that feeling. I think that our ordinances and our siting rules are a product of a lot of previous work, and that we're trying to look towards the future. And I think that there'd be opportunity in the future should contract zoning get enacted to discuss and get feedback from the community. Are there other places where this should be appropriate as well? But we felt that by increasing to 400,000 square feet, it takes away all those community projects. And now it puts it at a threshold that if a project were to come in, it is large enough that it likely has the necessary backing and staffing and levers to go through the process of an agreement. That was the big thing we had for discussion, because I brought up at our last meeting, like, the return on investment just isn't there to take the risk for a 1-year process for a 10-acre
Right.
project. Once you get over 20 acres and you're getting into, not that I'm saying we want what Green has, which is 600 acres, that's already going to take that organization a year to work through things. There can be some more wiggle room there. So we felt like this week, by hearing your feedback from the board, from the commission, and doubling it, it's a good step to try to meet in the middle as we move forward, so.
I appreciate that.
And I will be a very strong advocate for development other than these here for contract zoning. I actually question why, as we're doing this, we aren't putting a threshold in that when there's a site plan review that gets to a certain size, that shouldn't be part of this initial conversation. I am an advocate of that. So I can respect that opinion and appreciate it, because I share those same concerns.
Thank you.
Did
I
you
think
have,
it's a good first step. You know, you did this pretty quickly, really, and we can continue to improve it over the years, especially with experts that we have on staff
in the community?
and in the community, yes, that's what I meant.
Did you have any I think maybe if we had some questions for Michael, this would be a good time to ask him questions. You probably weren't expecting to be in the hot seat tonight.
I wasn't sure.
But if you have any questions about further recommendations from the Conservation Commission, now's a great time to ask Michael of those, if anyone has any more.
So, I mean, my first thing is I wish you had come to us sooner, because I think it's a good thought. And, you know, I may not be here in May, but if I am, I would not want you to give up this other stuff you're working on, because I think I'm curious. I'd like to see it and really have a more thorough conversation when it's not like we have to make a decision tonight to get it on the town meeting in April. You know, no matter, I hope you continue with that, and I know I'll be curious whether I'm here or not. You know what you
Josh
say.
isn't ill; he's up for re-election.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had
If
a
I'm
diagnosis that you wanted.
Sorry.
Just make
So-
that clear. I'm
So
listening, sorry.
I didn't want to be presumptuous. But I do appreciate. I just wish it was sooner, because now it's like, you made a lot of good points, and I think it's something frankly, we should have thought about sooner. So I appreciate that. There was something else I wanted to ask you, and I can't remember what it was. But so.
Can we let Heather go?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll come to you.
I do think the work is really important, because I think if contract zoning passes, if we, in the interim, have the ability to identify where important areas not to do siting are, whether or not it's an ordinance or not an ordinance, you know, the layered map thing is happening or contract zoning is happening, I'm gonna wanna know if we're talking about going into a high valued area, and that will impact my decision as a board member. So the work is absolutely important, whether it's happening for this particular avenue, or if we were doing some sort of layering thing. I think they're one and the same for me anyway. The information is very important information. And that goes not only for solar and for BESS, but for any other development.
Well,
It's just another planning tool that's really important for us to have.
Sorry, that's what I wanted to say. I think whether or not these solar farms stay in contract zoning in the future or not, that's important information to have. And so I agree with you 100%.
Not only for solar, any development.
But yes,
And
We
I think
need
that
to
this
know where
could
those
be a really
areas
good
are.
thing, a really good goal for next year, because, for example, we obviously know we have resource protection district, but we know that, highlighting the comprehensive plan too, like critical rural areas have been talked about as having something looked at them, agricultural areas, some resource protection doesn't rise, some resources don't rise to the level of resource protection from standard activities, but could. So even if no matter where this goes, I think that work can be used moving forward. And even if it's not a mitigation system, but almost like a ranking system, like red, green, and orange places for industrial or commercial development in town. I'll just end with saying that the reason I'm okay with parking this here is that I know that when the Conservation Commission went through the process of developing a really great solar ordinance, they started off that process and said, holy cow, trying to develop this ordinance and a siting tool in the same year will be very difficult, especially when we have to consider if we create a mitigation fund, who holds the money, where does it go, what's all the charter language around that? And so they said, this is gonna take us time to work on. For me, parking large, over 20 acres of panel development into contract zoning puts in some siting tools for the town that aren't existing right now, while other work can be done. And I'm more comfortable, especially because it's gonna be 18 months before our next town meeting, to have something in place there while that really important work's getting done. So that's where I felt okay with this. So that's my appeal back to the Conservation Commission. But
You're invited back.
I can't serve on the Conservation Commission anymore.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Michael. Really appreciate
Thank
it. And I just flagged for Michael that you were not. Michael's a doctor. I was gonna say, like, I don't want him thinking you're on the way out on a stretch.
Not yet.
Okay, do we have any other discussions on clerical questions or information on the ordinance before we entertain a motion?
We're just talking about.
Just BESS.
Okay, yeah.
Just contract zoning and battery energy storage systems.
I would make a motion to approve Part 2 draft amendments to contract zoning and battery energy storage systems as written.
Do I have a second?
Second for discussion.
All right, any additional discussion? You can go first, Heather, it's fine.
I just want to know if George has anything to say. I feel like when our planner is here and we're talking about ordinance changes, I know you're here to answer questions, but I don't want to pass over and you're being polite, not raising your hand and saying you have something you want to say. Do you have anything you want to say? Okay.
Let the
thank you.
record note that George gave 2 thumbs up.
Okay.
Well, I was just gonna say, I feel like a lot of good work went into this, and I feel like we learned a lot. We really leaned well on our Conservation Commission. I appreciate their feedback, and on the Planning Board and their feedback, and then the all the feedback we got from the community. This is a lot of work to do in a moratorium type setting, which I don't think we've had to deal with that sort of work here for a while. It's been a while since the last moratorium. And so I think that this was really good. I think that it gives us, like everything we work on, it seems like when we come up with some solutions that we get 4 more questions. So I think that this is a good learning process for us, and maybe set up some future goals that we can go over at our next goal setting session, which somehow will probably be less than 2 months at this point, which seems a little crazy. But any other questions on the motion? All right, so all in favor of the motion? Any opposition? Okay, the motion has passed unanimously.
Ooh.
And again, I'll just note, Joe Tom is not here tonight, but he had provided affirmation on this as well, so. All right, B, draft amendment to the historic properties. So this, you can see here highlighted are the changes that came out of our discussion from last meeting. They look good to me. I just will pull up. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh, you do have, perfect, thank you, Jim. Okay, so we have some draft changes here based off of our discussion during the last last meeting, which was 7 days ago. You'll see that they're highlighted. Oh, I'm still in BESS.
Can someone remind me, remember how I offered to read a statement? Was that I was offering for tonight to read a statement because they
You
couldn't
said that
attend, or that I would
so
at
we-
town
that-
meeting?
You said that you could read a statement at town meeting.
Okay,
but also we are gonna discuss the email that
Okay.
we received from them.
Thank you.
I was gonna go digital, but
Okay, I
definitely
couldn't
the
remember
updates, I
I
appreciate
couldn't
that.
remember when I said I was.
I just want to go over real quick. So as you can see, section 6.21 B2. This is where we've got some changes. So it now says if any portion of the subdivision is in or abutting to any. Yeah, George, we'll just launch it out here for this one. In or abutting to any site of historic or prehistoric importance identified in the comprehensive plan or designated as a historic resource set forth in section 5.14, the National Register of Historic Places or the Maine Historic Preservation Commission, the project shall be subject to advisory review by the Historic Commission in accordance with Article 12. Appropriate measures for protection of the historic or prehistoric resources shall be included in the plan. The board may seek the advice of Maine Historic Preservation Commission in reviewing such plans. So the major change here is we added in or abutting to any is being added, and then identified by the comprehensive plan or designated as a historic resource set forth in section 5.14. And so this is addressing that concern about the, hypothetical gas station across, this is the subdivision. So this is addressing the concern about the previous situation that we've had in town, and I feel like this meets that concern. George, did you want to add anything on to that?
No, that is for subdivisions, and the next one is 8.6 is for site plans. So basically, the construction of a subdivision or a commercial non-residential building next to one of these historic properties would trigger an advisory review from the Historic Commission.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go over the changes here real quick through everything, but then we can, once we get, I think that was the major change here, but then we can address the questions that the Historic District Commission sent in. So yeah, like George said, 8.6 then talks about non-residential properties. I think that is all we have highlighted here for tonight's review. So we received written comment from the Historic District Commission, and one of the things that they were raising concern about is the review period. And I think there was just a slight misunderstanding of the review period that they were referencing. That is for notifying abutters, correct?
Okay, under the draft ordinance, for any advisory review by the Historic Commission, there's a 15-day abutter notice process. And then they have 45 days from receipt of the application or determination that it's complete to make a decision. The 12-day notice that they referenced is for, in addition to that, on a demolition, they have to post a legal ad, and that legal ad in the paper has to be done at least 12 days before that meeting. So every application, the butters get noticed 15 days before the meeting. Once the Historic Commission determines that the application is complete, they then have 45 days. So theoretically, they would have one meeting, they'd review the application, discuss it, determine whether it's complete, and then the following meeting, they could make their decision. So they'll have 45 days total, 15-day abutter notification, and only in the case of a demolition, there's a 12-day legal ad notice requirement.
So that timer isn't for their response, that timer is for other elements, and they'll have longer time to respond, and I just wanted to clarify that for them. Heather?
When you say that the application is complete, if the application is before the planning board and the planning board needs their review, is it from the time that the planning board application is deemed complete? Because I feel like that might be a situation where there's not a lot of overlap. So can you explain that?
Sure.
Thanks.
If they either have to go to the code officer for a permit or to the planning board for a, whatever the application, subdivision or a commercial site plan next to one of these properties, then they're gonna have to go to the Historic Commission for their recommendation, either before that process or as part of that process. But until that process is completed, the planning board and the code officer cannot issue a permit.
Okay.
So is it a separate like application to the historic
Yes,
commission?
it is a
Okay,
separate
okay.
application with a separate list of requirements.
Okay.
In terms of submissions.
Okay. Thank you.
So, I think that, we have, I think that if, anyone from the historic commission were here today, they'd say, cool, that addresses our issue we were concerned about. There was just a little bit of a confusion on that timeline.
I disagree with that in one instance, if you don't mind just
Sure.
me saying. I think their issue is with demolition and that they feel like they want to have time to make sure that if a property is going to be demolished, they have the opportunity to be able to record, take anything from it that they can, you know, like that type of stuff. I think, in addition to which I do think they misunderstood, I think their concerns are around if the notice is given, a property can be demolished within 30 days, and they don't feel like that's enough time for them to turn around being able
30
to.
days not being enough?
Yes.
Okay.
Right,
That's
to
what
be
I
able
think.
to document the, yeah, because like when Parker Schoolhouse got torn down, the developer didn't have to wait, but they chose to wait, I think, because it would have probably created a big public outcry. But they went over, they were able to document, they saved like wood and some bricks and, you know, the whole, whatever, they did a whole thing to be able to document that existence of that building. And I think what they're saying is that 30 days isn't enough days for them to be able to turn that process around.
Yeah, 30 days seems sufficient to me, and so that's I'm okay with it as written personally, but I'm open to hearing what other folks think.
Did you read the email from them? Do you
Yes, I
agree
did.
that?
Yeah, and what they're asking for basically is 120 days, which is
Yes.
4 months.
Yeah, I think that's excessive.
And part of that with the demolition is, and if you look at the language of the draft ordinance, really talks about exploring alternatives.
Right.
So seeing if there's a not-for-profit that would be willing to purchase the building and move it, those sorts of things. But the issue becomes, you know, the property owner's rights. And I do think before you consider, and this was done at the Parker Schoolhouse, but the code officer at the time had real concerns with the idea of people going into the building that was determined to be dangerous and collecting materials. And also, I would certainly talk to your attorney in terms of whether or not there's a legal right for anybody to take anything from that property. It's one thing to do a visual survey, which is what this calls for, and I think that's why the town attorney included it. But the idea that you're going to give them the right to go into buildings and take property away from it, that I think is a very questionable activity. So the question becomes, the real issue is, should they be given, somebody be given time to look for alternatives to the demolition? That's a policy
And I
question.
think that might also lean into some of the discretion of the property owner, because there may be, hey, sure, if you can at no cost to me find someone who will come pluck this building and pull it away, go for it. But I think saying, but I have to wait 4 months for you to come up with that is really tough, because we think about the shorter building season we have, if we have a winter time situation, or we think about maybe the developer or the property owner has some funding constraints or contractor constraints, just putting in a 4-month hold for someone to fundraise to ask them to do something that they might not even be interested in doing seems a little
I think 4
excessive
months
to
is
me.
excessive. I'd like to see a compromise and do 60 days instead of 30.
Go ahead, Deb.
There's nothing that prevents them from getting an extended time with the owner.
And that language is in there.
Right, so, I mean, it's really a 30-day minimum.
Yeah.
It's 30-day minimum, and if they, in that 30 days, want to need more time or whatever, they can work that out with.
And to me, this is ultimately, I want to give the discretion to the owner too, rather than, hey, you have to wait for people to come forward and potentially fundraise. And because even 60 days in a construction window, with how quickly construction companies are gobbled up and the time frame for all these sorts of things, that just seems like a lot, especially because and I'm not saying that there's any sort of ill intent here, but what the commission could want to do might not even be something that the property owner wants to do. The property owner may not want to move the building. Or may not, they may just want the building gone, so to say you have to wait 60 days for someone to come to give you a proposal to take your building away, and you don't want that to happen, it just seems a little onerous to me, where I feel 30 days is fine, because if they have a interested party who wants to explore those sorts of options, they can then work together to come up with an agreement. And so there's nothing saying the property owner can't say, sure, I know I only have to give you 30 days, but I'm willing to wait 50 days or 60 days if you've got something. So I think it's fair as written here. Josh, did you have something you wanted to
I agree. I think the developer is going to take into consideration the importance of these historical properties and structures to the residents of this town if they're going to want to do more business here. So I don't think tying it up unnecessarily for much longer is necessary, because I think if something's going to get done, there will be an agreement to get it done within 30 days.
This says that the commission has to be notified before
Yes.
okay. So they're gonna know before the 30-day window starts.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's the notification, which is 15-day for a butter.
Yes, 15 days for butters.
Right, and so in theory, the commission may become aware of it at that point, correct? Like if a butter wants to say, hey, commission, or if there's a note, like when will the commission have to be notified?
The code officer will notify the commission upon receipt of an application.
So that's the 15-day window there.
No,
Or
from
the-
there, when they schedule their next meeting, at least 15 days prior to the meeting, they have to
So they're gonna know-
notify the abutters.
They're gonna know more than 30 days in
Yeah.
advance. They're gonna know when the code enforcement officer knows.
That's right.
And so that's giving them time to start that process and that conversation. And then there's the 30-day window.
Yeah, and again, so let's just say somebody files an application, let's just say there's 30 days. So 15 days before the meeting, then the notices go out to the abutters. The Historic Commission meets, they review the application, they determine it's complete. They have 45 days from the time that they determine the application is complete until they have to make a decision. So the clock for the 45 days starts at the first meeting, and then they would have at least one more meeting unless there's a voluntary.
This is to make a decision on demolition?
This is for any permit. The only difference with demolition is that they have to post a legal ad in addition to the abutter notifications. And that's where the 12 days
That's
comes
another
in.
12 days.
It's just for the ad to be posted.
So if a building's gonna be demolished, the commission has to weigh in on the permit to demolish the
Yes,
building?
it goes right through with any other permit.
Okay.
So to me, this feels like it's giving the
Do
commission
you agree?
a
I feel
lot
like
of
that also.
opportunity.
I just wanna read that one more time.
Yeah. Which section?
I don't know.
I'll help you get there.
Thanks.
The 12-day notice is on page 31 of your packet.
Where does it say that the commission,
Okay, so on page 30 at the bottom, 4,
Yeah.
standards for demolition or relocation of a historic resource. So that's the section where the 12 days is listed. So if you go over to page 31, C2, in addition,
wait, I'm not lined up.
Different than ours.
Yours must be different
your
than ours.
packet, this is right off the website.
We have, on page 31, it's the administrative procedures.
Okay, so it's section
So,
C4, standards for demolition
just to
or
clarify,
relocation.
C in ours is advisory opinion.
Right.
Am I looking at the wrong? Historic preservation revisions.
So section C is advisory
Can I
opinions.
see what you've got? Okay. So let me use yours, please. Okay. So on page 30, is that the page you're on?
I don't know, you tell us.
Yeah, page 30, C4.
Process.
No. This says standards for demolition or relocation of a historic structure. Isn't that what yours says, Jerry?
Standards, C4, standards, and making a recommendation.
Ours says C is advisory opinions, 4 is process.
This is,
I'm going on the website and see what's there. Where are we?
So we're on page 24 in our packet.
24?
Right? I mean, that's,
Oh, sorry, this is a misunderstanding. You're talking about 5.14 C, and we were looking, all of us, on page 30, which is 12.1 C. That was,
Tell me where to look,
so
please.
page 24, which is part, so let's go to page 23, we'll walk through, because I know that's what we need to do. Section 5.14, historic resources.
Okay.
And then we flip over to the next page, and A is historic resources, B is applicability, and C is standards.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's page 26
So-
is the demolition.
Yeah.
Okay. And then demolition standards, 4 is, because we're now under C1, it goes all the way through, and we get to 3 additional standards. Page 26 is 4 standards for demolition or relocation of a historic resource.
Is that it?
yeah, that's where it was. It's
Yeah.
on page 26 of this version. Okay, great. Okay, so 4, if you go over to C2,
So underneath 4, we're moving to C. Presentations of the application to Historic Commission shall be delayed to allow additional posting and notice as follows.
yeah.
The
in
2
there-
I's.
Yeah, so you got, in addition, notice shall be published in a newspaper of general circulation not less than 12 days prior to the date where they will consider the application.
And that's, the opening statement is in addition.
Yeah, so then if you go to the 15-day notice is administrative procedures, section D,
One second.
D1, the notice to owners.
Let me find it here.
Page 31.
Yep, D1, notice owners.
It's on 31.
Yep.
Okay, so there you see notice to owner, and this is for any application for advisory opinion of the commission. Within 15 days after submission of the application, the code officer shall inform the following persons by mail, and it goes through the list of people, including the abutting property owners. And then 3 below that, the commission shall make its recommendation on the project within 45 days of the receipt of the completed application, unless the applicant has agreed to waive that deadline.
So basically, the application is complete,
Mm-hmm.
it's turned over to the commission, they review it within 15 days of receipt, say it's complete, and then 30 days after that, or however many, you know, if they meet 11 days, 34 days after saying it's complete, they have to issue their opinion.
Within 45 days.
I just want to ask one other question that I think we talked about, but I just cannot remember the answer. The application, is that going to be the same application that's available at town office already, or do you have to create a new one?
We would probably create a new one, or at least update the one that we have for these new provisions.
Right, okay. And that,
Yeah, because the one that's currently is for a certificate of appropriateness. We're not doing
Right.
that.
just something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we want to start back from the beginning now that we've got our page line figured out, Heather?
No,
I just wanna make
just
sure
give
we
me
have
one
your
second.
question answered.
Just give me 1 second to read this
worries.
one section. Okay, so I'm back on 26.4. Any historic resource shall not be moved unless the property owner can demonstrate okay? The historic resource shall not be demolished unless it is deemed to be structurally unsound by a licensed structural engineer or the code enforcement officer. C, presentation of the application to the Historic Commission shall be delayed to allow additional posting and notice as follows. So I'm just clarifying one more time that if somebody wants to demolish a building that's over 100
Listed
years
as
old.
no, listed, not over 100 years old, listed as a historic,
Unless it's a school
unless
or a
it's a school
church.
or a church.
Okay.
But other than that, it's not just a 100-year-old building, it have to be one of the listed ones, plus
Okay.
schools and churches.
Right, and that's a change, because currently it's any building over 100 years old.
No,
Okay. It's not?
no.
Oh.
And then the other thing too, Heather, if you don't mind me interjecting, it's saying here that a historic resource shall not be demolished unless it's deemed to be structurally unsound by a licensed structural engineer. So in terms of like the fundraising to pick up and move and that, you're only even allowed to file that demolition permit if it's considered structurally unsound.
Right.
So that's also limiting the ability to demolish. You can't just buy the Bliss Farm Inn, and or I know we're not supposed to use examples, but you can't buy one of these properties and just say, I want to level it, even though it's in perfect working order, because I want to put in a KFC, you know. No offense to KFC, but you know.
Okay, my thing was just that yeah, it's fine. I'm good.
No, this is.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I just want to make sure that the any demolishing application goes to. That's why Parker Schoolhouse came into play, because it was a school.
Yes, and that building had been declared by the code officer as a dangerous building.
Right. Right. Okay.
So the other question that they had here, so I kind of highlighted what they, again, I was going to go off my phone, but thanks for printing it down. My take from them is they essentially have 4 questions. They're talking about the historic resources, but doesn't express clear guidelines for which properties receive identification beyond placement of the National Register of Historic Places. That's what is considered a historic resource. And should they do an architectural survey, that recommendation that they find after we do an architectural survey goes to the main historic preservation, state historic preservation office or commission. Then the state says, thank you for all this work. We will make an evaluation on whether this should be listed or not, or whether it should be considered. And so I think that that is the correct process to go about here. I don't think a process of where we do a survey and just say, we've identified this as a building without anybody checking our work, this is now receives these protections. I think following the process for getting these buildings officially listed works, and my understanding of what we have here, it applies to the buildings if or when they are listed or listed as potential. Is that correct? And so I think that answers their question number 1 there.
I disagree again. I think that what they're saying is that if we're doing this ahead of the survey, that there are potential resources that have not been identified that could potentially be identified in the survey, go through that process, right? We don't even know, other than the ones that we have that are the 8, right? And that if we did the survey, it could shed light on more than the 8, not just every building over 100 years old or whatever criteria, right? That those ones that they would potentially identify in the survey would then go through the process of whether or not they would be eligible or be listed. And so what I think they're trying to say is that if we do all of this before we do the survey, there are potential losses that could happen in the meantime if we're waiting until 27 to do the survey.
But they're only talking about the historic district. We request that existing protections stay in place for Durham Historic District in the interim before the survey.
Yeah, and so
Which,
what I'm seeing here is they're saying we identify buildings outside of what the state has identified, just that we suspect will be protected, and we want them protected before we have to go through that process. And I'm not comfortable protecting something based off of a suspicion that hasn't been confirmed. Just like we would not do that for resource protection, we'd have it go through the official channels. And so for me,
I
I'm
disagree. They're talking about the district, which
Right,
we
they're
have
talking about-
identified as,
but there's not been there's not been a survey done on the district to identify and list the buildings as historic.
Which is what
We-
they're asking to do first, before
But-
we remove protection.
But there's no protection on them right now.
Well, there
It's not,
is.
it's not that
It's
we're
just,
removing protection, there's no protection on non-listed buildings in that district.
that's not true.
Okay, so I think a fundamental point of this whole discussion is remembering that the town attorney has said the current district is not enforceable. So even if you were to maintain the district, it's not going to be enforceable according to your town attorney.
And that's what I mean when I say there's no protection on those. I think that there is the thought that there is, but legally there isn't. And so maintaining a ordinance or maintaining language that isn't legally enforceable doesn't make sense to me, especially when we're going through this process. And my understanding of it is if once we go through the survey, once we get the properties, that gets sent to the Maine Historic Preservation Commission, and they say, you surveyed 275 buildings in town that are over X amount of age. We think 7 of them we're going to list and 5 that we're going to consider for listing. That then triggers that this applies to those new findings, correct?
Yes, and just understand, the process of the Maine Historic Preservation Commission is not just the age of the building. It's
Yeah.
what architectural period, is there any historic significance, what alterations have been done to the building? Has it lost its historic character because of modifications? What condition is it in? Is it a building that's like a falling down barn? Those sorts of, all of that goes into the evaluation process. And then they have to determine that it is either eligible, they have to make a determination that it is eligible for listing.
And so my understanding is this gives the protections to the existing buildings and sets up a framework that should other buildings meet the criteria, they receive protections, and removes language that isn't enforceable anyways from the ordinance. And so I think that answers their question about the interim, because we've already had the legal opinion that what they want us to maintain in the interim isn't legally enforceable. So those were kind of the 3 questions that they had posed, and then they posed a 4th question or recommendation that really says, break this up into 3 phases where we only would do the renaming from Durham Historic District Commission to Historic Commission in 2025, and then have them complete the survey, and then wait until 2026 and 2027, and then wait until 2027 to determine protection status of the historic district after evaluating the survey results. But again, phase 3 doesn't apply because our historic district isn't legally enforceable. And waiting to put these protections in place until after the survey, to me, I think is unwise. I'd rather see us put the protections in place with a framework that allows the survey to provide protection to the appropriate buildings. And so, for those reasons, I take their feedback into consideration, but I think that it is either addressed here, or the recommendation isn't legally enforceable, so I don't think we can accept it. So I'm open to hearing what anyone else thinks before we move to a motion. Josh?
I'm in support of it. The only thing I would say is lawyers can be wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, never happened to me, but it's happened to others.
You've heard
I
her.
feel like my understanding of the attorney is, and I'm not saying that you're not right, George. It's very possible that I am understanding that wrong, and maybe it's even in here. I thought what she was saying was not legally enforceable was the 1,500-foot radius, and that the district, she said, was created according to whatever, because obviously it's there, we voted for it to be there, right? And so what my understanding was that the district was created the way that it was supposed to be created, and the 1,500-foot radius around anything that's outside of the district is what she was saying was not legally enforceable. That was what my interpretation of it was.
She was saying that both, and the 1,500-foot, without question.
Right, I'm not
There
questioning
was no process.
Yeah, I'm not questioning
But
that.
for the district itself, there are only 3 buildings out of 34 buildings. And that was another concern that she had. There's not enough historic district basis to create the district, even if it went through the process. So that was her concern, making it suspect whether you can legally enforce it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, right now, outside of those 3 buildings, the remaining 34 don't have any extra process they have to go through for like
Well,
enforceable process.
Yeah, again, see, and that's part of the problem. This process is, in the current ordinance, is so confusing. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question, and people will argue about it. Does this, and they have argued about it, does this have to go, doesn't it have to go? The church that was replacing its buildings, its windows, excuse me. The staff was just spinning on that, and the district commission was spinning on that. So the lawyer has given you a template for getting a clear, legally enforceable ordinance.
And in my thought process is, from what we've heard from our attorney, is I think this would be a very different conversation about dissolving this district if they said, hey, of the 34 buildings, or of the 37 buildings in the district, 50% of them have been listed as historic. I think now we're dealing with contributing factors within the district. But as it sits right now, there are a small number of 3 that have been listed as historic, and the rest are not listed. And so to me, it just makes sense to say, well, we're maintaining robust protections on those buildings. We're also now making sure that there's protections associated with any sort of subdivision development adjacent or nearby, but we're not going to have this amorphous, non-understandable language around non-contributing versus contributing factors within that framework. So I think that this addresses that while still leaning really heavily towards protection of known historic resources, far more so than an ordinance necessarily needs to. And so I feel like this strikes a really good balance, and then sets up a good framework for additional surveys. And then should additional survey work get done, and now all of a sudden a group of people in a neighborhood decide they want to come forward for a historic district, that's data driven rather than opinion driven. And I think that we've made it very clear on this board, we make data driven decisions, we get the information. So that's why I'm comfortable with it as written.
Can I throw one more curveball in the mix?
Sure.
This is my thing. This is what I think that area, I've said this before, right? I will not die on this hill, right, about the district, but I think the district has more significance than just its buildings. That area has historic significance other than just the buildings that are there. I know I'm not going to win this argument, but I would like to add to the churches and schools, municipally owned, I don't know if I'm saying the words correctly, structures, because then the adjacent conversation would apply to Eureka and the bandstand.
Eureka's not in the district.
I know, we're getting rid of the district. I'm saying if the language around what is considered was a church, a school, the granite stone walls, that if we included municipally owned structures, that would include Eureka and the bandstand. And whatever else we
Over a
own.
certain age.
Over a certain age. The same things that apply to that's my proposal, to stop trying to convince everybody that we need to keep the district.
Is that a motion?
Sure. Yes, I'd like to make a
Can you
motion.
rephrase it just so?
I don't know, I'm not good at motions.
That's all right.
Let me go to the line that defines the things.
So you-
George, can you help
What do
me?
you think
You
about that?
would be making a motion to edit the proposed ordinance
I would.
to include language, and then you can insert, say, I make a motion
It's on page
to
24,
include
sorry.
the following language.
Can you tell me the right word? Is it municipally owned? What would the right word be?
Maybe municipal buildings or municipal structures.
Before I'm no expert in this, but wouldn't the Eurekas fit under something that the Maine Historic Preservation Commission would list? It has historical importance.
Well, we don't know.
They did a survey and it's not on their list.
It's not on their list.
And I think in part.
When did they do the survey? It was.
They did like all the major routes, because DOT has to do that review, and they did not determine that that is eligible.
And so this is where I think what we get into is what we want to be or feel should be eligible versus what meets the criteria. And for me, I just really struggle, and this isn't being mean or anything, I just struggle with, we have an evaluation, it's not determined to be historic. I still want it to be though because it's important to me, which is fair. But for me, that's just not how my brain works, so I'm not supportive of that. And I know that like the Eureka Center is old, and there's a lot of history involved with what the building's been used for, but there is an addition on it, there is modern components to it, the facade has been changed. So I think that your motion doesn't get to your concern with like Eureka. And then with the bandstand, I don't know how you go about getting that evaluated, but there's disagreement there on as to how much of that's historic, because most of it's been replaced, it's broken, it hasn't been used, the area around it's different. So like, I don't think your motion I guess I'm doing the work, your motion work for you. I don't think your motion gets to what you want it to say.
I think you are
So I
trying to
think what you
speak for
might
me.
say
What
is
I
just
said
make
when
sure,
I
you know.
started the conversation is that I feel like the area itself has significance beyond just the structures. And where the bandstand sits is a historical area for a reason more than just the structure itself. The same with Eureka. Like the dance hall that used to exist there. And so that's my opinion. We don't have to share opinions. You can disagree with me, right? And that's fine. I feel like municipally owned buildings, because 100 years from now, like this fire station, maybe this is something that we're gonna want to protect historically. I'm not just thinking about what's existing right now. I'm also thinking about what we invest in as a community in the future. And that's a different thing than the argument that you're making about the onus on individual landowners, right? These are community resources, and I feel that they're of value and to protect the ones that have been existing, the ones that exist now in the future. That's my opinion. We don't have to share the same opinion.
Do you
And
want
that's
the
fine.
motion to just state municipal owned buildings? Or did you want to list out, I just
No,
want to
I
make sure
don't
your
wanna,
motion says what.
I don't wanna list them out because like today, the fire station isn't a historical structure, but 100 years from now, it might be. And yes, obviously ordinance change. I don't even know if this is legal. George, I'm stressing
Well,
you
that's
out.
the,
You're rubbing
that's
your
the
head.
concern.
Yeah,
Because,
okay. So never
you know,
mind.
it's one thing to talk about that area being historically significant, which it absolutely is.
Mm-hmm.
They call it Ferry Road for a reason. But
Thank you for saying
but the
that.
question is, does it rise to the point of exercising the zoning police power of the community to regulate individual property rights? And I don't think it does.
Okay, that's fair. It's fair.
But I do want to take a moment to recognize that what you're saying, like, it was the downtown center, there were other buildings used to be there. I believe there was like a cattle pound that was there too at one point or something like that. So I think
Cattle pounds up on Pound Road.
sorry.
but, yeah,
wrong thing, but I understand what you're saying, that it, just because the space doesn't have certain resources doesn't mean it isn't the historic downtown. So I definitely hear that. So I think that's,
and there are other ways to approach that too.
Do you want to make a motion for an
No,
amendment, Heather?
I don't. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome to.
Good discussion though.
Yeah. I'm just, I wish that the district was legally enforceable until we can get the survey done.
Yeah, I hear that.
Okay, I make a motion, or are we in discussion?
So
Where are we?
we're in pre-motion discussion. We haven't even got into motion discussion yet. So do we have a motion on draft part 3, draft amendment historic properties?
I'll make a motion to approve Part 3 draft amendments to the historic properties as written.
Second.
Do we have additional discussion? All I want to say is I appreciate your points on this, Heather, as someone who has a different perspective on these resources than some of us else on the board. I think it's an important voice, and it shows the need to support and do a historic survey and have a more robust discussion about our resources, especially ahead of our pending comprehensive plan review. So I think it's really, I just want to say it's an important thing to be heard here, so I appreciate that a lot. Do we have any additional discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion? Any opposition? Passes unanimously.
Joe Tom was also in favor as
Yeah,
written.
Joe did indicate his support via email, he's not here tonight. All right, so new business. We have to open a public hearing on updating the general, thank you, George. Oh, man, I got slapped.
Thank you, George. Sorry, I didn't mean to stress you out.
Oh, not at all.
The life of a town planner is a baseline of stress that most of us don't
They have a
want.
saying, when the rubber hits the road, I'm sitting in front of the tire.
Yeah.
Thanks, George.
So we have to open up a public hearing on updating the general assistant ordinance to get feedback from the public. So do we take a motion to go into public hearing? So I would take a motion to enter into public hearing on updating the general assistant ordinance.
So moved.
Moved by Josh, do I have a second?
Awesome.
Seconded by Deb. Any discussion? I'll just say that this is the opportunity for the public, just one person here tonight, to provide feedback on the general assistant ordinance updates based off of the numbers we have from the state. So, any other discussion on the motion?
I mean, this,
All right. To go into the
Oh, no,
hearing?
sorry.
All right, all in favor?
Oh, we're going in the hearing. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, this is, okay, we're now in the hearing. Do we have any public comment? Okay. Do we have any board member comment?
I was just saying, this brings us into compliance with state law, and it adds $200,
4.
$400 to the budget. to-
General assistance line.
And when was the last time we spent any of that? It hasn't been,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
Yeah, we
it's-
don't get a lot, we haven't,
But it puts us
mostly-
in compliance with state laws, so
Yeah.
I think we have to do it.
most requests that come through, the folks don't qualify for it, so we actually don't really use it much. All right, so I will take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Josh, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Heather. Are you getting these, Jess? All right, any discussion on the motion to close the public hearing? All in favor of the motion? Any opposition? Seeing none. So now, we have closed that. We do not need a motion to approve it because we've already approved it in the previous meeting, or would it be easier for you if we did a
So
motion?
we approved the appendices,
Mhm.
so we drew a note here to put this on the town meeting warrant, so that all the town is gonna vote on it.
Okay,
Is that part of the new business C, where review and discussion of the draft town meeting warrant, or,
Yes, you
so?
should have a warrant.
yeah, we do.
Yeah, we have
We
it.
do. All right, so we'll make sure, we'll just add that
Yeah,
as an
so we just
appendice.
do-
Yeah.
Talk about it at that time, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean
You're
to
good.
take over for you, but
You're good. I was.
that's what I thought was.
So, the next thing on new business is appointment of the, so ballot clerk appointments. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who, does that sound correct? 5 people who have volunteered. Do I have a motion to approve them as a slate of volunteers?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Alright, motion by Josh. And I apologize, I didn't use the motion language, but I'll get there some. Do you have any discussion on the folks? Or any
Just together.
additional discussion?
Joe was in support.
Joe was in support, and as always, appreciate people stepping up to the plate.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, I think one thing, just pontificate here for a second, and I know no one wants me to, but before getting involved with town government, you just show up to town and things work. You don't realize how many people volunteer or step up to the plate for these sorts of things. So I just want to really thank the people who are willing to volunteer, because I guess I just lived in this world where the election happens, the people are there, and then getting involved, you realize there's a lot of work, so we really appreciate people willing to step up.
Is it, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it legal, I don't know what the rules are, like, I feel like, do we recognize these people in the town report? I was gonna say, it would be, I don't know if it's legal to do that or not. I mean, I think we don't wanna make town meeting last longer than it already lasts, right? To like read the names of the volunteers that actually help us with our elections, but I have been having multiple conversations with people lately about how our town report is like really a historical record of that year. And so I think, I go back and I look at old ones, you know, like the Historic Commission, Society is now scanning them all and like they're available, whatever. I think it would be nice if it's legal to list that in the town report so that,
Like a volunteer page, like the
Yeah.
following people volunteered.
yeah,
their
I mean, I
time
know
this
we
year.
do our boards and commissions, but like especially like when it has to do with the elections and stuff, like there's a lot of people that really make that happen. And I think if we're allowed to, I would like for that to be recognized in writing. If we're, I don't know if we're allowed to, but if we are, I think it would be a nice thing to do.
Yeah, I think you're a good point there. Any additional discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor? Any opposition? Seeing none? Wow, we are flying. All right, review and discussion of draft town meeting warrants. So in front of us, we have our draft town meeting warrants. There are,
Including 19 that addresses the change in the town meeting.
yep, number 19 does address the change in town meeting.
A long time to get to say that.
And we have articles through 30, Article 30, and then we have the warrant articles, the 31 through 34. That's placeholder
Yeah, until, right.
for, yeah. And so I think that we have reviewed this document a lot. I will say that all the fiscal warrants, the budget committee voted last Thursday night as a slate to approve all of them as written in one motion with, there's no discussion indicating any issues with any of them, and that passed unanimously. So those have been double checked by them. I will say, and I want to address this in the new business line that we added after this. There's nothing about the gazebo in here, but I wanted to discuss that separately from a warrant article. So,
Where's the cemetery?
Article 30.
Thank you.
yeah,
Can I read that? Just-
absolutely.
So we addressed the warrant article changing, but Jeff, I know you sat here for how many years?
So,
Is that it? I thought it was a lot more.
felt like it.
Select board years count as 2, so 14.
And then, is there one day it's gonna be the Wakeman homestead near the old historic district? Right, no?
Probably not.
Okay. I was trying to say, but one of the things we keep hearing is, you know, we don't know about this, we're not hearing about it. We've talked about this change in fiscal year for over a year. And so what I would ask is if you could send an email or come to the next meeting for public comment. I know you mentioned like having a special meeting or something like that, but I think in our experience, we don't get a large turnout, and there's,
We'd love to solicit input on
How to get it out.
recommendations, yeah.
because, you know, you said that, and I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know, we had one earlier this year, we had what, 20, 30 people, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, even the public hearings on the ordinances with
Which
like,
these were
which
really big ordinance
like,
changes.
Only
Right.
2
Really
people showed
big.
up.
So,
you know.
and I understand
Yeah.
that special meetings and stuff like that often are less attended. But if there's something sent out, it gives the option of the townspeople to come and say something. And my biggest thing is because this was such a big change, and that's
So so you think it should go out as a so it's been on how many meeting agendas?
Well, all
It's
of
been-
ours for the last couple of months, and then
And so,
and the budget committee has discussed it
And-
extensively.
and
Those
so-
don't go out to the town as a whole, yes.
But-
You
well,
have
they-
the option to, if you go look at it, where if you had a special meeting, that would be in your news blast and other things that would catch people's eyes better.
So do you think that possibly a solution would be for something like this, a separate news blast could have said, at the next select board meeting, they are discussing the fiscal year change?
Yes, and but also allow for comment during that time, because comment ahead of time is,
We've had that larger conversation over the last year too, yeah, about allowing
To have to
comment during.
preemptively have the public comment is difficult because you don't know what we're gonna say.
Yeah,
exactly,
Yeah.
and, I mean, I understand why it was put in there, to some degree. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's a whole other thing. So, but I know that the meetings have to be somewhat streamlined.
well, we appreciate the feedback.
I apologize for
That's okay.
probably inappropriately asking for, but I do appreciate it because
We do have the ability as a board to vote
Yep.
to allow people to speak
yeah.
and then close it
Yeah,
after.
I think in the last few meetings, we've kind of just used discretion, but
Yeah.
that's a good point, yeah.
I'm just saying, I'm totally fine with this. You guys know I'm always the more the merrier, but
No, that's well, speaking of that public comment, I sat through a legislative session earlier this week in Augusta, and they do public comment after presentations take place. They hold
before the
people
vote.
before the workshop that they even consider working
Oh,
on
I
it.
see.
So there's multiple times, and they do allow it before, but they are tight to that time limit. So I do think it's a good discussion for the beginning of our
Yeah,
next
that's what I
cycle
was just gonna
because
say.
I think we've learned a lot this year that we can build off of. But thank you so much for that public input. So,
Thank you.
any additional discussion on the article language here? I'm assuming, like, Heather, I know you usually like a missing comma or something like stick out to your keen eyes that I miss, but, other than that,
I
this
feel like-
looks good.
Based on feedback, those types of things, I would email. Just like those types of like grammatical things that can be done
Yeah.
in email.
Scrivener,
instead of-
but yeah, either way, sometimes I feel like when we have something in front of us that looks really good, there's not much to say other than like looks good, but I want folks to know that we go through it with a fine tooth comb.
Yeah, I
And
did
then-
read through all of the, because sometimes the warrant article structure in terms of to see what sum or to raise and appropriate and like that type of stuff. So I did go through
Yeah.
all of that, and everything looks good to me.
We should vote to add this and then vote to it together. Oh, that one's yours, sorry.
That's what I was trying to hold this up to remember to say, it's not in here, so we should,
So,
as
seeing
Article 31.
yeah, seeing,
I do have a question. On Article 23 about, see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to dispose of town-owned property, which they deem is no longer needed. Is this a normal?
Yes.
Article? Okay.
yeah, it's in there, so like, if,
Because we know we want to start looking at property that the
Well,
town owns.
and I got hung up on that a few years ago. By property, it's not like just physical properties, it's like, if the fire department gets rid of the boat, we have the authority to put the boat up for sale for a blind bid.
Okay, but it excludes
No,
property,
it would
land?
include physical properties as well.
Okay,
Um,
we probably want to vote on that.
But I think that we have discussed at town meeting that
Real or
Trans-
personal.
transfer of actual like physical, like
Land.
land
And
is
that-
something that we would want more input on than,
That's a process.
yeah,
There's a lien process, there's a foreclosure process, that's like automatic.
Okay.
yeah.
So this is.
Because when
this
you
is-
read it,
Right.
when you read it in
Okay.
a vacuum, it can be pretty jarring.
Yeah, when you dispose or sell property, or there's a whole state statute you have to follow to do that.
But I think this is captures like,
Real or personal.
what do you mean when you say real or personal?
Real estate or personal property like the boat.
Yeah, yeah. On the lingo with realtors over here. I was like, it's all real. It's not imaginary.
Town-owned property, not personal, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd make a motion to approve the draft town meeting warrant to be included in the annual town report and make the general assistance ordinance Article 31. Unless there's a better place to put it.
Jess, you get that language? Seconded by Deb. Any additional discussion?
I just have one quick question. Oh, go ahead, Jerry, you can go first.
So, I've been to 2 town meetings so far, I think both, towards the end, they just do all of the ordinances like at once. And I don't know as if they do that, if keeping Article 30 there is appropriate. I think that's kind of a,
Yeah, I agree.
that's a different, that's not like a normal.
That article, I've seen that kind of thing at the beginning, before the financials.
So if
Or
you,
maybe
I
not.
just threw it in there, you know, because it's easier, because
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would put it as Article 18 because I think Article 18 and Article 19, well, what would be, I mean, put it in as Article 19.
And then
so-
move
and then-
everyone else down.
Right, and then here is Article 19, but would then be Article 20, which is a change in the town meeting date. We'll have some discussion and will not be voted on as,
You want to withdraw your motion?
I will withdraw my motion.
So I will move that we take Article 30 and move that to Article 19, moving all articles down one and numbering appropriately.
okay.
Do I have a second?
Hold on a second, please. So the business article heading will go,
Not Article 19, which was read.
no,
Well,
let me
Article
talk for a second, please. That's not gonna be a business article, the cemetery and the town meeting, right? Those won't be under the header of business article, or they will?
I think they are.
Well,
Okay, okay.
I think they are, because we're talking about changing the town meeting, which is business, and I think accepting the cemetery is,
So the reason why I was suggesting pull them out of business article is because under that header is because of what Jerry just said. We typically vote to do all the business articles at once. So if we don't take them out of that heading,
but we can exclude them. So
Okay.
if I were asked, I would make the motion right now. I would say, I would move to vote on Articles 20 through 28.
as
And-
one slate.
Right, because I think there needs to be, I mean, I'm okay with the 5% budget line, I think is typical, and, I mean, I have no problem leaving it where it is, because I don't think there really needs to be a special discussion on it, but I don't really care. But I think the cemetery one, people need to know, you know, there is a minuscule fiscal obligation, but also, you know, I think we have this duty to make sure this property is taken care of, and so that's special.
Yeah.
And,
So I think we can pick and choose which ones we vote on,
and sorry for interjecting, I should have let you know.
No, it's fine.
No, I'll do that right.
Thanks.
Article 30, my thought process, like Josh said, is if we just move those two special ones, because I do think they technically still meet the category of business articles. To Josh's point, we're gonna vote on this one, and should it go smoothly, will we approve the rest of the slate? So we just gotta make those motions to line that up.
So if you want,
So
maybe
my
we should
motion
move Articles
was-
29 and 30.
No, Article 29 is the
Right.
5% transfer. So I was gonna make the motion to, move Article 30 to the first of the business articles.
For some reason, I thought Jerry's was 29, but 30.
I think he was talking about making this,
So I'm saying,
Yeah,
my
that's
motion is to make the adjustments here and then vote to approve it as amended. That's my thought process. So
Yeah.
I'm making the motion to move Article 30 to the first of the business articles. Is
Yes,
there a second on the motion?
second.
Second. Okay, and so the intent here will be to move the language in Article 30 to the first of the business articles. Everything gets renumbered. Is there any additional discussion?
What's the number of this draft
Well,
warrant?
I'm gonna make a motion to add that to the last of the business articles, or the
Should it
second
be
of the
last?
second
Yeah.
of the business articles after.
Well,
So-
then your motion.
What is that?
This is the general assistance.
Oh, okay. Well, the general assistance will go into the ordinance.
Oh, sorry, yeah,
So you,
that becomes
So-
the first of the
right.
ordinance.
So we're just gonna renumber, putting the cemetery 19, the rest's gonna follow.
Yeah.
General assistance will be
So-
under ordinance warrant articles number 31.
Yeah, and so just for process, my thought process was, we make the motion to add this, move this, we make the motion to add the ordinance warrant article, and then we make a motion to accept
Gotcha.
as amended.
Sounds good.
So my motion as it states currently, who seconded that?
I did.
Josh seconded it. Oh, the rare chair, vice chair motion. That would be to move Article 30 to the first of the business articles. Do I have any additional discussion? All in favor? Any opposition? Seeing none, that passes unanimously. I now make a motion to add the adoption of updated general assistance ordinance to the first of the ordinance warrant articles.
Second.
Second from Josh, do we have any additional discussion? All in favor of the motion? Any opposition? Seeing none, passes unanimously. We'll let you all number them, because that will turn the first of the ordinance warrant articles to 31, yeah.
You just said you were gonna let them number them. Moving on.
So I'll make a motion to approve the draft town meeting warrant to be included in the annual report as amended tonight.
I second that. Any additional discussion? All in favor? Any opposition? Seeing none. Okay, next on new business, we added this, again, we don't normally like to add new business, but this was my fault for forgetting to have Jerry put it on, ask Jerry to put it on the, meeting in advance. Is discussion about the War Memorial and the War Memorial Park and the gazebo. We've received some public feedback both from, I'm messing up my historic societies, can you
Durham
say me
Historic
better?
District Commission and the Durham Historical Society.
The Durham history groups, I always intertwine. And another, we've received some public comment, just wondering, I got from a couple different people, are you all asking about the gazebo this year? And Jerry, could you give us a little insight, because the Public Works Manager has gotten some feedback on the gazebo about the situation of where it sits and costs and things of that nature?
Yeah, so the road commissioner has had a couple different contractors look at that gazebo. Some of which live right here in town and have for a long time. Recognize that gazebo's been there a very, very long time. And it has been remodeled several times and don't feel there's really a historical board in the gazebo itself. But it has historical value. And this particular person feels, the town is, or at least some will want to see some sort of gazebo there, whether it's a refurbished one or a renovated one or a brand new one. And I think that's where we have to, where the board's going to have to make a decision or ask the town what they would prefer to have done. Now, the road commission has gotten quotes, and to get a brand new one there, you're gonna spoil a 14 by 14. You're gonna spoil 25 grand. That's getting it built, delivered, and in place. Might not cost a total of 25, but somewhere probably between 20 and 25,000. To redo that one, you're gonna be looking at close to 15 to 20 anyway. And a matter of fact, that one sits high off the ground, so it's not really ADA compliant. So if we was to get a new one or refurb that one, you'd want it lower to the ground. So really it depends on,
In that, if you don't mind me interjecting, and that becomes, what I'm learning is there's a nomenclature difference here. That fact that it is higher up is what makes it a bandstand, not a gazebo. And the fact that the roof's higher because it projects noise more, and so then you get into the question of, does refurbishing it to meet the way it used to be now create a non-ADA compliant structure out there too, so something else to think
so I think the
about.
question before the community is, do they want a gazebo there and how much are they willing to spend to keep one there?
And I know that there's a difference of opinion because I know that some folks have expressed to us that any piece of that that still is historic or original should be kept. My understanding from what we've got for feedback is there's nothing original there from the I think it was 1860 something that it was built, so none of the wood on there is from 1860, but it might be from an update that happened in the 1900s, and then you get into what to keep and what not. My thought process would be we could ask via, at the municipal election, via a ballot poll, would you entertain, would you like to see the town move forward to replacing or renovating the gazebo not to exceed $25,000? Yes or no? The reason I think we should ask is because while we could spend this money out of the public municipal building reserve, it is not one of the things that we have listed to the community as a planned expense in that 10-year reserve plan. And I know we take very seriously diverting from that, so this is an opportunity to get some public feedback. If the answer is yes, then we can have a public meeting and get some public feedback and invite the people who are vocal to say, is it better to put a new one? Is it better to put a refurbished one? And then we can proceed from there. My recommendation is to do this as a local ballot as part of the municipal election, because we get more people who vote in that than do attend the town meeting. It's not the great turnout that we had for like the policing discussion, but it might still be 400 people versus the 150 that turn up to town meeting. And so after we get that feedback and have the result, we could have a brief facilitated discussion at the town meeting to get additional feedback from people then to just ask. But I just wanted to get the thought process from the board on how best to proceed. Heather?
If we take that route, does that mean we have to wait another year, another 18 months to go before town meeting to use the money if the majority vote that they want to do something?
No, because we are allowed to expend out of the reserve accounts at our discretion. I'm just saying we have been very clear that we have a 10-year plan. This would divert from that 10-year plan. And so I think we just need to take very seriously any diversions from there. But this would be a way to expend out of that. So if the town overwhelmingly said yes, and we feel that the feedback from the public is build brand new, we could buy and build brand new within the next year. So.
I think if we put it at the vote versus, the town meeting allows people who are passionate about the topic to express their concerns, which might influence someone's vote.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it might be better to be done at the town meeting versus the voting.
Well,
So,
you could share the results of your poll at the town meeting to
is
get
it a
the
poll or
discussion.
is it
It's
Oh,
a
I think
poll.
It would
A
kind of be
straw
like what we
poll
did with the police at the last election,
Oh.
but this would just be at the municipal election. But I see your point too, is
Okay, well,
that
no, if it's a poll only, and then at the meeting,
Discuss
it's
the
Yeah.
discussed.
because frankly,
And then what,
if the well,
Well, we decide.
We would
So,
decide.
Like how we
That's for
decided as a board not to pursue the police
Mm-hmm.
based on what that feedback from the town was in the vote. This would be our information gathering, like, it could be the poll and the information that we gather at town meeting, and then we make the decision.
I don't think discussing it at the town meeting is the best idea, because we're gonna be there for a while, it's gonna be a long day. And this is a discussion that I think needs to have ample time, because, in my view, we need we need a bandstand, it should be made ADA compliant, but it should look similar to what we have. The question, and I think taking what Calvin's been told, that there's nothing original, we should start over. But there's going to be a difference of opinion.
Mhm.
So not,
And to me, this is a discussion that could take 30 minutes, it could take
I mean,
a couple of hours. And frankly, before we do it, I would like us to go out there with Calvin and take a look at it.
So,
Because that is something we had started, we had gone to the Union Church, we had gone to
Mhm.
Public Works. We haven't really done that here, I think we all know the town office, but, I think that's something we should keep doing as well. But I think, I'd like to be there, I'd like Calvin to point things out to me.
mhm.
I mean, I will tell you, I'm gonna support it, something has to be there.
Mhm.
And based on what Calvin said, I think it's something that should be new, should be built to last, and then we can say in 150 years, this was our contribution to remember the past and provide it to the future
Yeah.
in a way that's gonna last.
So I'll let you go, Heather, but what I want to say, I think that what you just described, Josh, could be, we get a vote at the municipal election via a poll. If we get the feedback, yes, we will develop a process where we will go visit it, we will solicit quotes, and then we will have we can do at one of our meetings, do a special public hearing to get feedback from people of, you've got the quote, here's the new, here's the refurbished, here's the whole situation, and get that public feedback and then move forward from there. That would be my proposal on how to do it. I
I'd just
hear
like
you.
to, can we put a
Go ahead.
bookend, a timeline on that process? I don't want this to, like, we already have it shimmied up with a pressure treated post. Like, I don't want this to turn into
Yeah.
a year-long process.
So, I mean, I think it would be something we would want to do,
By the beginning of summer.
right, like, our meeting in April. I mean, make a decision by August, I would think, or at the latest.
Oh,
What?
Well,
No,
I mean,
way before
I
that.
think,
Well, that's what we're
I
here
mean,
talking-
I will say that I will want to go out there
Yeah,
because people want to keep it because they say it's original. I want Calvin to the extent
So-
he can and I can understand it, he can show this isn't original. And then we could say, I want to be able to say, I went out there with
Is
someone more knowledgeable than me, he explained it.
a June 1 deadline for this reasonable then? Because we're gonna meet in April.
I think
That
we,
gives us May to solicit feedback and all that information, and then we vote on an action in our first June meeting.
yes, and I would like to how we're gonna include the Historic District Commission. I would like to get, I know the Historical Society has pictures of the roof, and like, I know we had talked once about maybe the only thing that gets saved is the roof, and the rest of it is what gets replaced new. Like, I want their opinion also, other than just the 3-minute public comment.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I think it's important
I-
to get their feedback.
Yeah.
So
I
I
think
wanna
we've-
do like a direct invitation to them.
So I think we've got a plan. What do you need from us to get direction to write a poll?
Strobel, just give me the language that you want.
Mhm.
Can I also say that with recent national events, the 25,000 is probably going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we should look at up to 30,000.
I also think that there's,
a lot of money.
I do think that there's this is the kind of thing, just based on the Facebook group feedback, that this is the way that people donated and I know donating to like, you can't donate to the town, right? But like how we did the thing with the flags, I think this is something that people would make donations to, that business owners in town would make donations to. I don't know how that would work, but I do feel like that's an option. I think there are a lot of people that would donate to this cause,
I think we would have to team with the,
Historical Society.
yep,
Yeah.
and have them take the lead and then fund what they can. Say, we'll give this, we'll give X amount and you raise the rest. But,
Okay,
I
so
mean,
do we have a motion for language to direct the straw poll on?
I would make a motion that we include in the municipal election on April 4th, a straw poll asking the residents whether they want to spend up to $30,000 to replace or repair and replace the bandstand.
Jerry, information that I need to make an informed vote is what the laws are about ADA compliance.
Okay.
I think
Do we have a second on the motion?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. That's all right. So we have a second on the motion, and we're in discussion.
I think I seconded. I didn't, but maybe that's what I meant with my comment.
I think ADA comes in when you're doing any remodeling of a public space, so I think it would come into effect. Does it apply to a bandstand? I don't know the answer to that, but.
I didn't know if we refurb or restore, maybe restore is the right word. Sometimes I feel bad that we're not using the right language. I mean, I always do, I guess. If we were restoring something, I didn't know if ADA compliance comes into effect. If we're replacing something, I would assume it absolutely does. And so that's just where I would appreciate knowing what is legally required for both of those avenues.
Right, so I looked at it today, and so if it's up off the ground, you need a ramp that's at least 36 inches wide and a 12-to-1 ratio, so it's like a ½ inch per foot.
And with that, it would have to be a zigzag. at
Well,
that
not
point.
necessarily if it wasn't too bad, and you could,
It'd be really
it could
long.
be straight too, it just depends on, it really determines how high it sits up off the ground, right? And then you need to have a radius inside the gazebo, enough for a wheelchair to turn around. But I can get you.
Okay, and just if that's also the case, I know for sure if it's something new, if we're restoring, is it also the case that it needs to be ADA compliant?
Yeah, I think if it's for, I'm almost sure, I'm 98% sure, but if it's a public gazebo, it'll need to be ADA compliant.
So the motion is to include in the municipal election on April 4th, asking residents to replace and/or repair and/or restore the War Memorial Bandstand not to exceed $30,000. Oh, so we normally don't do public comment, but I'll let you jump in.
I'm just wondering, on the question, if it may be confusing by putting the money amount in there, whether people think they are actually voting to spend that money.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't want people to actually be thinking that if there's a way just to.
Yeah, so maybe some language could be to include municipal election April 4th, asking residents to
At a future date?
direct the select board to explore.
Explore, repair, replace, restore the bandstand in an amount not to exceed. Does that?
I know it still gets into some nuance.
Or
I think-
what if you just said straw poll right at the beginning?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be on its own paper.
Yeah,
That
and
would,
it has to be a different color than the
And it'll-
ballot.
Yeah.
The clerks will explain like they did at the presidential.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
no, thank you, it's a good point.
That's a really good
Especially
point.
because we're doing it as a written ballot and not,
And-
don't have the opportunity to explain it, you guys,
And
but.
it also should indicate that this is to expend funds out of a municipal reserve, not raise and appropriate, because then I don't want people to think that we're voting to. I know we're getting real messy with this motion at this point, but
Well, start from the beginning.
Yeah, so,
this discussion
Jeff,
might
turn
lead
the
us to
page.
withdraw.
right, but I just want to be clear, you don't want any money value in there?
No, I
No,
do.
I think we have to put the
Yeah.
upper limit, because I think,
The unknown would just
Yeah.
cause people to say, oh, no way.
Can we say
Right.
transfer, so that they
It
don't?
wouldn't be transfer though, it would be
It
expending
is.
out of reserves.
Oh.
So,
so can
Let-
I rephrase it?
yeah. You wanna withdraw
Yes,
first?
we're-
You wanna withdraw the motion first, or do you wanna?
Can I just make an amendment to it?
I don't know, it depends on what your amendment is. I'm just teasing you,
To- No, I just,
sorry.
it just went out.
No.
Do we want to say something like, do you support the town expending from its municipal buildings reserve
Reserve.
account
Up
an
to,
amount up to $30,000 to refurbish, repair, or replace the gazebo? Question mark. New sentence. To clarify that, so the new second sentence would be, to be further discussed and decided by the select board no later than its first June meeting. So that we give us a deadline, people know when it's coming, so they notice to be on the lookout for it.
Right. And we can include it in the news
Right,
blast.
I'm trying to, does that make sense, or is that too much?
I know, I know
Sorry.
what you're saying, I just do have a,
It's two
that's a,
sentences.
that's a
Good for me.
lot, but my question for Jessica would be, being a straw poll and not an official state election, is there a, can we put in a
Note,
note
You
to
can
say,
put in a note,
so
yeah.
the top would just say, the following question is to ask for your consideration. Voting for this does not mean the funds will be expended to the total amount.
Yep.
And then the question could state, do you wish to have the select board explore the restoration?
all the language that we just talked about,
Yeah.
and then what?
Yeah, Jerry, you seem like you got something on there.
Well, we could come up with this between now and March 24th.
I was gonna say,
Can
what
we?
are we doing?
I'm forgetting that the timeline, this doesn't,
Is
I'm
there-
sorry,
is there-
I'm,
Early voting?
I'm thinking that this needs to go to the printing press, and that's my
There's
bad.
no early voting?
Actually, early voting
Yes,
started
and-
today.
Okay, so,
Okay.
because people got
All right,
upset,
well-
so we do need to hammer it out so that you can
As
put it
yet,
out
but it didn't
tomorrow.
start today.
Yeah, because
yeah.
people did comment that the police straw poll wasn't with their early votes. And
So-
that we only did it in person.
So how
Okay.
about,
Okay,
do you support the select board
exploring.
exploring their the
I
options
was gonna say
to,
exploring the replacement or refurbishment of the Durham War Memorial Bandstand, right? That's what it's called. Or
And you should put gazebo in parentheses, because I
gazebo, yeah.
didn't know what bandstand
Me
was when we
neither.
first brought it up.
the refurbishment or replacement of the war memorial.
Gazebo slash bandstand. With the cost not to exceed $30,000 and expended out of municipal reserve account. The existing municipal reserve account. Because one thing we did say last year is that when we wanted to explore to the best of our ability, if we were exploring expenditures out of the reserve account that hadn't been previously shown in the capital improvement plan, that we wanted to give people the opportunity to weigh in. And so this is saying, like, we have the authority to do this without asking, but we want to get the opinion of the community, because it's not an insignificant sum of money. That's not part of the language.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So, do you support the select board exploring the refurbishment or replacement of the War Memorial gazebo bandstand with a cost not to exceed $30,000 and to be expended out of the municipal buildings reserve account?
Jerry's like,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
And so, again, I think, so it doesn't include the language of the deadline we're putting in, but I think if it passes at our meeting, we can
First meeting,
talk about it, put it in the news blast,
yeah.
and say, this is coming.
The other thing too is we could flag in the news blast that this is
Yes.
for
Well,
consideration.
yeah, that, we should put that question in the next news blast, I think, and say, this is a straw poll.
Yeah, that's what I'm writing it. Yeah, 'cause this almost looks like a.
Warrant, well, this is
Yeah.
like, now I'm like, well, why not just put it on as a warrant?
No.
But then
I
the problem
just
is
don't,
there's so few people and it's a,
I just don't think that's the right place for a discussion like this.
I had a question, what if the polling comes back in the negative?
Then we don't
And it's
move.
no.
Then we decide we can go against it or we don't, or,
but if it comes back as no, I think that that's just what it comes back as, just like when the police came back as no, we didn't explore it, and unfortunately you just say to some of the really vocal proponents, like, we asked the community about this and they didn't want to move forward, because frankly, if they say no, like, what do we say, like,
Well, that's
too
my
bad
question.
these 4 people really want it, like, I don't, it's just, I mean, saying no doesn't mean they don't respect the bandstand, it's just gonna be the fiscal no, and that's a big
Well,
number. It's not
well,
all
that's
about
the
no.
other thing is that then, not that we're gonna do like the whole committee and all that stuff, because we do not have time for that based on the condition that it's in, and I do feel like it's been, it needs to be addressed. If the answer is no, then we can have a discussion about, does the Historical Society want to take responsibility for it? You know what I mean? Like, then we look at other avenues if people don't want to spend the money. It's not just we're just gonna let the thing fall apart. Like, then it's our responsibility to figure out what to do next. That's the way I look
'Cause
at it.
At some point, it becomes
Derelict.
dangerous, children,
Demolition
Yeah, I know.
it's, so, I mean, we have to figure out, but I agree with Heather, and I was gonna say the exact same thing. So if it doesn't pass, we either say we ignore it, or we look at different options.
Right, because, with everything that's going on in the world, people might be like, 30,000 is a lot of money for our town.
Yeah, I mean, just as of today, cost of doing
Like,
business is gonna
you could
change.
do something like they did at the school and sell bricks or something, put bricks around it to
Yeah,
make
for
it,
sure,
to make
yeah.
it more wheelchair accessible, or something like that, I don't know.
I think, but this is just gives us the
Or
opportunity, because
boards.
there's been a lot of vocalization, it gives us the opportunity to try to quantify the scale of some feedback, and then if the answer is yes, we know how to proceed, if the answer is no, we will address it as something this year, that we will, in 2025, that we
In
do.
fact, I think we should actually see if there's a way to do it that will not distract from the historical significance of the bandstand, but maybe do try to raise some money by selling like boards or something
Right,
that
yeah.
you can put your name. Because I know when I go to the school, I still look at them, even though I've seen them all a million times.
Yeah, totally.
And my kid still says, "Oh, I wish I were here when they did this, so we could have my name up here."
Right.
So I
I
don't know.
think ultimately, you wanna have a discussion right here at a select board meeting and not on social media.
Yep.
Yeah, and I also think that we can do a better job with that discussion of not just putting it on an agenda and having the discussion, but doing some outreach to the Durham historical groups to say, and to the public, this is the town meeting, the select board meeting where we're going to discuss the future of the bandstand based off of our information and the vote, so.
Because you've got design, color, if they wanna do something new, you've got a lot more. to
There's a
talk
lot,
about
yeah.
as
Um,
we move forward.
I make a motion for Josh's language to be added as a straw poll.
Second.
Second. All right, any additional discussion? All in favor? Any opposition?
Go
Seeing none.
team, way to fumble through that.
We failed forward. Okay. Cool. Okay, short meeting, but, we've already done that. So now we're moving into, manager report.
Just a couple things, here are the trifolds that are going out, they actually come out pretty good. You take a look at those. You can see it.
Ooh.
I mean, I have it on 65, why is this so hot in here?
So we just got those,
This looks
yesterday,
really nice.
and, we're doing addresses and stuffing envelopes, so they'll hopefully go in the mail at the end of this week, if not, it'll be Monday.
Yeah.
Oh, they come out good. The only other thing that I have for you is, Road Commissioner Bomir will be posting roads Monday, March 10th. He'll be posting them right along with Freeport, Brunswick, and neighboring towns. So that's just one for you to know.
First signs of spring.
Yeah. So, since it's only been a week, that concludes my update.
Yeah. Hasn't only been a week.
Can I ask a question? There's been a lot of comments about the escrow and the change. The first tax payment with the 18-year budget,
18 months.
18 months.
18-month budget is not gonna be before August. Right, it'll be October 15th, which would be after the first payment would have been due
So escrow
previously.
accounts will have.
So the
12
escrow
months.
should have the 12+ months already by then, and then you're gonna
It'll
have,
only be 9 months worth.
and the bill will be, right, and then you'll have in the next 6 to 9 months time to make up for that. So you're gonna have the full 18-month payment escrow withheld, escrow account, money in your escrow by the time the second payment. I mean, you should have the first one already, and the second one should be 9 months or more by the time the second one is due,
Because if
right?
August 1st, you would have 12 months normally in your escrow. If the payment then moves to October, you now have 14 months worth of money in your escrow. And then the second payment being April,
You'll have another 6
that's
months.
6 months, but you'll have the carryover of the
Right.
2 extra months. So just want to make it clear, like, your bank, we are not the first town who's done this. This is not the first time your bank has dealt with this. It's going to be a seamless process, or it should be a seamless process. And so there's been some miscommunication, stating that banks won't know how to manage this, and that is categorically false. They will.
And we're working with, what's the name of the company that?
CoreLogic.
CoreLogic deals with a lot of the mortgage holders.
Mhm.
They're also getting that. We've been in touch with them.
Mhm.
They already have it.
They already have it, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want I saw that post and I meant to reach out before, and that's, okay.
And it's well written in here.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
whole section is well done.
So, thankfully,
Um,
other people have done this process before us, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel here, and it's gonna work out nicely. Did you have questions for Jerry?
I did have a question for Jerry. We talked about, after we approved all of this, that this was gonna go on the website. And we're also gonna send a text through TextMyGov saying, here's the link to the website where all of this information is. Okay, and can we?
It's on the website already.
Yeah.
The warrant language isn't, because we haven't approved it.
No, this is pamphlet.
Oh, the pamphlet is,
That's
yeah.
on the-
Right, can we just include in the text that there's information about the fiscal year change and all town meeting information is available on the town website? However you wanna word it, just say both
It has
things.
to be like two separate.
Okay,
Once we get over a certain character limit, it's
So
supposed
once
to.
we have everything, I mean, so we did the news blast, and we've already heard from some, because they got it, right? So for town staff, we have to manage this, because if we, and we're gonna probably get a lot of calls once they get into the mail. So we try to like,
roll it out in phases.
yeah, because we will get blasted, possibly, so we gotta, you gotta think about that.
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So they got the news blast, now they're gonna get the mail. We can also do text it, and we do it as many times as you want, but we're trying to manage
I think it would
the
be,
response, if you will.
Jerry,
In plenty of time, because this isn't really happening until, what, August, October?
yeah.
So there's plenty of time, I mean, but I'm
And-
very cognizant of their time, my time, and get it, you know,
And
take.
I
This
was,
is a big deal, no doubt. But
I was thinking about that a little bit more, and like, this is now on the website, it's in the news blast, it's gonna show up in the mail. And so, there's gonna be a whole glug of feedback that you all receive when people see it on the website. There's gonna be the glug of feedback when it shows up in the mail. The phones are gonna probably go off the hook for a couple days. This doesn't take effect until after the town meeting, so it's not for a while. I think that that's an important process to get that feedback though, because when we do that video about GP Cog's recommendation is you get the feedback and then you curate your video of the interview between Jerry and myself based off of that feedback to answer those frequently asked questions. And so, I think that's gonna be important too. But I do think that once the warrant language is on the website, this is already on the website, and then the budget's on the website, that maybe next week a text could just go out and say, everything, all information pertaining to the town meeting is now available on this link.
Right.
And so we've announced it by the news blast this week. It'll go out in the news blast this week again. And then next week, in addition to it being in the news blast again, it will also be a text so people are getting, and then another notification, so. So I think the overlap of people who have signed up for the text and the people who read the news blast is pretty similar. It's a good chance for us to utilize the technology we have to communicate, so. I want everything we mail out to just have also a sticker that says, check the town website. Like, maybe we get custom stamps or something like that, it says town website.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your report.
No, I'm good. That's-
Board member reports, I'll start off, I just wanted to say, I heard some feedback that just wanna say, I'm always impressed and happy with the town staff because, they get some tough feedback from members of the community sometimes, and they have in the last couple of weeks, and they've been professional and provided great information and helped people, even when some of the feedback from the community has been a little tough to manage. And I just want to say, I always appreciate all the great stuff I hear about the town staff and how professional they handle themselves. So I just wanted to acknowledge that in my report. And I won't take up our time tonight, but I had some really cool thoughts on things to do next year for public hearings and how we manage those based off of some professional development I had this week, so I'll save that for later though. Josh?
All set.
Oh, Joe's not here? Heather?
I went to a conference this week on real estate and commercial development in municipalities and where gaps are that make it difficult for town staff, and also for it was so informative. There was tons of stuff that I learned, and I want to write up a synopsis and share that with you guys because and I have data graphs and all that stuff. It was really, really, really informative. I also got feedback this week, and I think we hear this, I think it's feeling a little more 50-50 split, which is nice. That we have some people who are saying, I was so impressed with everything that's on the website, and I was able to find what I was looking for, and I appreciate the way that you're communicating this information, and that type of stuff. And then we have the other people who are saying, there's not enough information out there. There's not enough information out there. And this particular feedback was with regard to a public comment that was made or a request that was made, and our untimely or lack of response, engagement, or continued updating of that process that the person came here and made, had, direct feedback or questions for us. And so I just, I always love for us to improve. And I just think that that's one thing that we can look to, is to make sure that when people are taking the time to come here and make a public comment, and, because it's easy to just stay home and not do that, that I really feel like it's important to make sure that our level of communication with residents is important, because I do think that's also a mitigation strategy for how much residents are then complaining to town staff. So just thought I would share that.
Thanks, Heather. Deb?
Maybe it's raising awareness about the complaint form that we have that not a lot of people are probably using.
I think there's also an element of sometimes folks do make comments, and a plan is vocalized, and they don't like the speed of the plan too. There is that element of, making a complaint, but it's being addressed at the next meeting. That's been vocalized. That some of those things are unavoidable, but I think there's a way we can repetition, and figure out a strategy. So.
I just think it comes right down to the level of service. We've got 3 people there. They've been doing the best they can. If they're not updating the website,
This
it's
was
probably a good reason for it. It's not because we're
I think this was
slacking or we don't
comment
do
more.
it.
I think the feedback was more towards our.
it was definitely about us.
But even
I think it was about me.
Well,
I don't want to say it was necessarily about you, but because that
Yeah, I saw the feedback.
I don't think that that's necessarily the case but I try to explain, we do have protocol, like, we can't just one-off go deal with something, right? We do have a protocol that we have to go through and whatever. I just think maybe, that's up for future discussion about the ways that maybe you delegate a point person for one specific thing, or, whatever. I just think it's something that we should address,
think
because I do
people-
think communication is
I
important.
think communication is important, but people should also send us an email rather than kind of town crier on the town page, because it's like, I'm aware of the comment. We've communicated our plan. Tonight, it's being addressed, but no one ever asked me. And so then to say, this isn't being taken care of, even though it's been communicated, we've seen other comments like that where
Yeah.
we're doing this tonight, and then the public comment is, why aren't we doing this? It's like, it's on the agenda,
Yeah.
You never reached out to ask for, to clarify after we've already told you the plan. And so, some of that just comes with the job.
Yeah, and I don't want to single one situation out, because I do think it's feedback that we've heard more than once. And I'm not saying that it's on you, Joe. I'm not saying that. I'm saying as a board, no, I'm thinking as a board, we have to look at the ways that we want to increase our communication with residents.
Which would go to the issue about the reevaluation. We need to really make a good communication plan that's getting up and running sooner than later. Even though it's out there, the anxiety associated with it, and I know we talked about that before. And I know you're gonna be working with GP Cog on that, is that right? On the reevaluation communication?
They're available.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that gets started like in January of 27.
The revow.
Yeah, it's like.
So I think after town meeting, we should start having those conversations.
We might not need to do it that soon. I mean, we all know it's coming, we know towns have struggled with it, we watch the evening news where it talks about the impact of towns.
Yeah.
I'm just
I
not
don't
sure
know
how
what
much
the right
communication
balance
about
is.
it right now
Something to think about.
will be remembered in a year and a half, because that's only my concern with that, it's like,
Yeah, I don't know how deep we need to go, but people can study up on their own too. Like,
Deb, do you have anything else to add?
no?
Well, by most of our standards, this has been a short meeting, but, anything else before we move into the consent agenda from any board members? All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Josh, any second?
Second.
Heather, any discussion?
Oh, there was a big bill in there for the school, I saw. What is that, just like the?
Any other additional discussion?
I don't see there's any discussion on that.
Motion for approval? All right, seeing no opposition, we are unanimous. Upcoming meetings with the planning board meeting, March 5th here at the fire station. Ag committee meeting, March 5th at the Eureka Center. I should state agriculture committee meeting, March 5th at the Eureka Center at 6 p.m. Solid waste committee meeting, March 10th at March 10th at the Eureka Center at 6:30 p.m. Public hearing on the land use articles, March 19th at the fire station at 6:30 p.m. And then a select board meeting, March 25th at the fire station at 6:30 p.m. Is there any need for an executive session? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All right, any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Seeing no opposition, passing unanimously. We are good. Signature time.
So did you come expecting to be the center of attention tonight? No. But you enjoyed it.